At my sister's wedding, I was given a plastic chair by the kitchen. Her fiancé said, "It's just for plus ones." I looked around. Everyone else had a seat, even my ex. So I picked up my gift, turned around, and said, "Plus one this." She ran after me in front of everyone. I, 32M, never thought my sister's wedding would be the day I finally stood up for myself. But sometimes life forces your hand in ways you never expect. The morning started like any other wedding day should. I'd driven 3 hours to get to the venue, a fancy country club that probably cost more than my annual salary. I was genuinely happy for my sister. We'd had our ups and downs over the years, but she was family. I'd even splurged on an expensive gift, a crystal vase set she'd specifically mentioned wanting from her registry. Walking into the reception area, I immediately noticed how elegant everything looked. White linens, gold accents, flowers everywhere. The kind of setup that screamed money and careful planning. I was wearing my best suit, the one I'd bought for job interviews, and felt reasonably confident I looked presentable. That's when things started going sideways. I approached what I assumed was the seating area, looking for my name on the table cards. The main dining area had round tables with pristine white chairs, each setting carefully arranged with multiple forks and crystal glasses. I walked from table to table, scanning the place cards, but couldn't find my name anywhere. Her fiancé appeared beside me, looking uncomfortable. He explained that there had been some confusion with the seating arrangements, and gestured toward the kitchen area. There, pushed against the wall near the service entrance, was a single plastic folding chair, the kind you'd find at a church basement potluck. He told me it was just for plus ones, that they'd run out of proper seating. I stared at him, processing what he was saying. I wasn't a plus one. I was the bride's brother. I'd RSVP'd months ago. I'd bought a gift. I'd driven 3 hours to be here. I looked around the main dining area again, this time more carefully. That's when I saw him, my ex-boyfriend from college, sitting at table 6 with a proper chair and full place setting. We'd dated for 2 years, broke up badly, and I hadn't spoken to him since. Yet somehow he'd made the cut for real seating while I got banished to the kitchen. The absurdity of it hit me like a physical blow. My own sister had relegated me to a plastic chair by the kitchen while my ex got the royal treatment. I asked her fiancé if this was some kind of mistake, if maybe my place card had fallen or been misplaced. He just shrugged and said they'd done their best with limited space. Limited space. At a venue that clearly cost a fortune, with tables that could have easily accommodated one more chair. I stood there for a moment, holding my expensive gift, watching other guests find their seats at beautifully appointed tables. Cousins I barely knew had proper seating. Family friends had proper seating. Even some people I didn't recognize at all had proper seating. But not me. The plastic chair sat there like an insult, positioned where I'd be hidden from view, where I could eat my meal listening to the kitchen staff clatter dishes and discuss the evening's service. Where I'd be forgotten, invisible, treated like an afterthought at my own sister's wedding. Something inside me snapped. I picked up my gift, the heavy, expensive crystal vase set that had cost me 2 weeks of grocery money. I turned around and walked back toward the main reception area, where my sister was greeting guests in her flowing white dress, looking radiant and happy. She saw me approaching and smiled, probably expecting congratulations or a hug. Instead, I told her I was leaving. She looked confused, asking what I meant. I explained about the plastic chair, about being seated by the kitchen like hired help, about watching my ex get better treatment than her own brother. Her face went through several emotions, confusion, embarrassment, then something that looked like panic. She tried to explain that the seating had been difficult, that they'd had to make hard choices, that it wasn't personal. I told her that relegating your brother to a plastic chair by the kitchen while your ex gets a real seat felt pretty personal to me. She reached for my arm, trying to pull me aside, but I was done. I handed her the gift and told her to enjoy her wedding, that I hoped the extra space would be worth it. Then I said the words that would echo through that reception hall. Plus one this. The entire conversation had taken place near the entrance, where other guests were still arriving and mingling. By the time I'd finished speaking, we had an audience. Her new in-laws were watching. Her bridesmaids were watching. Half the wedding party was watching. She realized what was happening and started following me toward the exit, her dress trailing behind her, calling my name. She was asking me to wait, to please not leave, that we could fix this. But I was already at my car, already done with the whole situation. I drove home in my suit, stopping at a drive-thru for dinner, eating alone in my apartment while thinking about how I'd spent months looking forward to celebrating my sister's big day. Instead, I'd been treated like a burden, an inconvenience to be hidden away and forgotten. Update 1. The fallout started almost immediately. My phone began buzzing before I'd even gotten home. Text messages from family members who'd witnessed the scene, asking what had happened, why I'd left so dramatically. I gave them the basic facts: plastic chair, kitchen seating, ex-boyfriend at the main tables. The responses were mixed. Some family members seemed genuinely shocked that I'd been treated that way. Others suggested I was being dramatic, that I should have just dealt with it for one evening. A few pointed out that weddings are stressful and maybe I should have been more understanding. My sister called that night, after the reception had ended. She was crying, saying I'd ruined her wedding, that people were talking about the scene instead of celebrating her marriage. I listened to her explanation. They'd had last-minute cancellations. The venue had strict capacity limits. The seating chart had been finalized weeks ago and couldn't be changed. I asked her why my ex had made the cut when her own brother hadn't. She got quiet for a long time before admitting that her new husband had insisted on inviting him because they'd become friends through some business connection. She said she tried to argue against it, but had been overruled. That's when the real story started coming out. This hadn't been a mistake or an oversight. This had been a deliberate choice. They'd known exactly what they were doing when they put me by the kitchen. They'd hoped I'd just accept it quietly and not make a scene. I told her I was disappointed in her, that I'd expected better from my own sister. She kept apologizing, saying she'd make it up to me, that family was more important than one bad evening. But the damage was done. She'd shown me exactly where I ranked in her priorities, and it wasn't very high. Update 2. The story spread through our extended family like wildfire. Within a week, everyone had heard some version of what happened. The details got more dramatic with each retelling. Some versions had me throwing the gift, others had me giving a speech to the entire reception. What surprised me was how many family members reached out privately to say they'd noticed the seating arrangement and thought it was wrong. Apparently, several people had commented on it during the reception, wondering why the bride's brother was nowhere to be seen during dinner. My aunt called to tell me that she'd asked my sister about my absence during the meal, and my sister had claimed I'd stepped out to take a phone call. The lie bothered me more than the original slight. She'd been prepared to cover up what she'd done rather than acknowledge it. My parents tried to play peacemaker, suggesting that both my sister and I had handled things poorly. They wanted us to apologize to each other and move on. I told them I was willing to forgive, but I wasn't going to apologize for refusing to be disrespected at my own sister's wedding. The crystal vase set, ironically, became a point of contention. My sister wanted to return it, saying it would remind her of our fight. I told her to keep it or throw it away. I didn't care. The money was gone either way. Update 3. 3 months later, my sister and I finally had a real conversation. She'd been getting pressure from other family members who'd heard the full story and weren't impressed with how she'd handled things. Her new husband, apparently, had been getting some pointed comments from his own family about treating in-laws poorly. She admitted that she'd known the seating arrangement was wrong, but had been afraid to stand up to her fiancé about it. She said planning the wedding had been incredibly stressful, with constant battles over guest lists, budgets, and family politics. By the time they'd gotten to seating arrangements, she was exhausted and just wanted to avoid another fight. I understood the pressure she'd been under, but I also told her that throwing your brother under the bus to avoid confrontation wasn't acceptable. Family should mean something. Being related to the bride should count for more than being a business acquaintance of the groom. She asked if I could forgive her, if we could rebuild our relationship. I told her I was willing to try, but that things would be different between us. I'd learned something important about how she viewed our relationship, and I wouldn't forget it. The plastic chair incident, as it became known in our family, changed how I approached relationships with everyone. I stopped automatically putting family first when they clearly didn't extend the same courtesy to me. I started setting boundaries and sticking to them. Update 4. A year later, my sister and I have a cordial but distant relationship. We text occasionally, see each other at family gatherings, but the easy closeness we once had is gone. She's made several attempts to rebuild what we had, but some things can't be undone. Her marriage, interestingly, has had its own struggles. The same husband who insisted on seating arrangements that humiliated his new brother-in-law has shown similar disregard for my sister's feelings in other areas. She's mentioned in passing that he can be controlling about social situations and family interactions. I don't take any satisfaction in their problems, but I do think the wedding incident was revealing about his character. Someone who would treat their partner's family poorly on their wedding day isn't likely to be more considerate in private. The extended family still brings up the plastic chair story occasionally, usually as an example of wedding planning gone wrong. It's become a cautionary tale about the importance of treating family with respect, even when logistics get complicated. I've been to several weddings since then, and I always notice the seating arrangements now. I pay attention to how families treat each other, how priorities are revealed through small decisions. The plastic chair taught me to watch for red flags I'd previously ignored. My sister recently asked if I'd be willing to attend her first anniversary party. I told her I'd think about it, but only if she could guarantee I'd get a real chair this time. She laughed, but I wasn't entirely joking. The whole experience taught me that sometimes standing up for yourself means walking away, even when it's family, even when it's inconvenient, even when people call you dramatic. Sometimes the most important person you need to respect is yourself. That plastic chair represented everything I'd been willing to tolerate in the name of keeping peace. Leaving it behind was the best decision I made that day.